Daniel Jones is a Viking, but what does that mean? What does it cost? What about the comp picks? What's going to happen next year? Let's get into all your questions on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you very much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today on the show, we are previewing the Cardinals game. We've got the over-under. That's where we're going to look at the betting lines. We've also got your bold predictions. We'll get into all of that later. But first things first. So the timing of the Daniel Jones news was a little weird because of the holiday week. I'm doing a lot of recording in advance. So this is coming out Friday, but the Daniel Jones news happened on Wednesday morning, and I'm just in the wake of that as I record. So here is where things stand right now. If there's any other major injury news or whatever that happens later in the week, you're on your own for that. And happy Thanksgiving, American listeners, and to everybody who's not in America. Yeah, we got a thing going on right now. But so the headline is Daniel Jones, Viking. He joins the Vikings practice squad. That's actually a sort of important distinction in terms of what we think maybe the goal here is. And everything that means we'll get into. But real quick, there is a little bit of injury news. I can at least see the first injury report. Very important. Cam Robinson is limited. And they actually felt like in a walkthrough scenario that he was... it was a walkthrough, so it was like an estimated practice report, but limited is a lot better than DNP considering that the injury took him out of the entire game last week. So that's a good sign, but we'll wait. We might have like a questionable game day decision kind of thing, but limited is much better than DNP. And they also waived Gabe Murphy, put the long snapper onto the active roster because he was out of elevation. So they're doing all kinds of roster maneuvering as well. But a big part of that is Daniel Jones joining the practice squad. Okay, so here is the nuts and bolts of this. He is going to make about $100,000 on the practice squad. That's very minimal cap. But if he ends the year on just the practice squad, if he isn't on the active roster come week 18, he will not count as a compensatory free agent. So the idea that everybody's into, the idea that I'm into the most with this, I'm going to call myself agnostic about what his future is for 2025. I'll handle that question later. But the idea is you bring in Daniel Jones, you pay him 6 cents, he hangs out at the smoothie bar all year, and he does basically nothing for you, but he hits free agency and counts as a Vikings compensatory free agent. So when he goes and signs a $20 million contract with somebody to go be a bridge starter, then the Vikings get a compensatory pick that's, probably a third rounder. Feels pretty great. The Vikings, I think, are going to try to do that, but to do so, they have to activate him to the active roster by week 18. They could do it he could just be on the active roster for just week 18, and that's it. And you just you cut whatever, a Nick Muse, you cut a Dan Feeney, who cares, right? And put him on the active roster for 1 week, and then that's that. As it stands right now, as he is new to the system, as he's, getting to know things, and I think kind of just looking for peace is what it sounds like. I wouldn't expect to see Daniel Jones on the field for the Vikings in 2024. If he's ever going to take the field for the Vikings, it's going to be like a next year thing where he's the bridge starter and he's competing with JJ McCarthy, and we're doing that whole thing. So we'll get into that at a much later date when that's actually relevant, right? Like we got too much to talk about. So to make the compensatory formula work, they have to do that. So my question was, does that have anything to do with his big, giant, inflated Giants contract? The Giants contract is entirely New York's problem. That's the answer to this. And thank you very much to Nick Corti at Over the Cap, who I also lean on a lot for compensatory pick stuff. And he's kind of the authority on all of that. So essentially, there's offset language in most NFL contracts. And what offset language means is that when one player goes to another team and gets paid, if he had guaranteed money on a previous team that's now dead cap, his new pay comes out of that dead cap. So the Vikings are probably going to pay Daniel Jones like $250,000. He'll get one game check at the minimum. and then the 100,000, and then like whatever the practice squad. So they'll pay him like $250,000, right? Totally negligible on everyone's cap. But if you're interested in the nickels and the dimes, that $250,000 will now be $250,000 less dead cap that the Giants have to deal with. And for every dollar the Vikings give to Daniel Jones this year, that counts that way, if you're interested. So that's how that goes, but it means that the money is going to be completely negligible and that the Vikings either get a compensatory pick or they bring back Daniel Jones for 2025 and he becomes kind of the Sam Darnold of next year. And we kind of go do this whole same thing again. That seems to be where we're at. So it's interesting. If you look at the way that everybody reported this, Tom Pelissero and Schefter and all the major voices, all very much made a point. They all made the same point, which I think tells you that they were told to make the point that the Vikings only have one quarterback under contract for 2025, and it's JJ McCarthy. So I think what they wanted this to be was don't panic about JJ McCarthy kind of move. Hey, we also need other quarterback. We need to fill out that room, right? And here's a guy who's an option to do that. Nick Mullins, pending free agent. Sam Darnold, pending free agent. I should also mention Trey Wingo, just straight up reported. Sources tell me Sam Darnold not expected to be back in Minnesota. So that probably just answers that question. That's common sense anyways. I think it always has been that Sam Darnold was playing for someone else's money. That's the way I've been saying it. But I think that's the first time a reporter has straight out come out and said, hey, sources are telling me this is the expectation, and not just kind of speculating on it because it's common sense. That's a little bit more official of a word. So there's that. And whatever money he goes and makes, by the way, he's a compensatory free agent as well. So we already got that going. And the idea now is you're going to have JJ McCarthy, I would say, presumptive starter or a formality of a camp battle with somebody, right? Make him beat somebody in camp. Okay, that's probably a fair thing to make him do, even in his second year where he very much should be starting by now. Go make him beat somebody in camp. And by the way, if you like Daniel Jones and, Daniel Jones, somebody who has been a starter, has a lot of experience, and if, you're picking between him or the rookie and you like both options a lot, let him shake out in camp. And you don't really need to make a declaration about one or the other by signing one or the other, right? So they probably feel okay about that. But now you basically get a couple of months as like a get to know you. And that's the way that the reporters sold all of this is, hey, maybe Daniel Jones is the Sam Darnold next year. And Brett Rippon, by the way, also not in the cards for 2025 yet. So neither is Daniel Jones. So nobody under contract yet. But now they can decide. Nick Mullins, Brett Rippon, Daniel Jones, 2 of the 3. What do they want to do? They now got all the time in the world to go get to know these guys and make a decision, or they can say no to all of those guys and go back out on the market. And you've got guys like Marcus Mariota or Jacoby Brissett, but they definitely want a veteran in the room. They're not just going to bring in, a 5th round pick and a guy that nobody likes, right? If it's going to be a veteran, maybe it's a reclamation project like Zach Wilson or something. He's also a pending free agent. So it could be somebody like that. But they want somebody who has starting experience, maybe even especially somebody who has starting experience that went bad so that you have that kind of emotional, like, hey, so when I was with the Jets, this went down, that kind of thing that Sam Darnold also offered. Like that might be something for them, but they will bring in some name that has starting experience. Whether it's Daniel Jones or somebody else is now what they are deciding. So I think what I want to kind of quell is I can feel it, the anxiety inside us all that says, wait, they're bringing in Daniel Jones. Does that mean they think JJ McCarthy is bad? The answer is an emphatic no. If you asked them, even if you asked them with truth serum, they would emphatically say no. Right now, Kevin O'Connell loves JJ McCarthy. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah loves JJ McCarthy. Ownership loves JJ McCarthy. They are still very much tying everything about this build of the Vikings to JJ McCarthy. And it's a matter of surrounding him with all the right pieces to help him succeed. And while we usually think of that as, his receivers and his O-line, the rest of that quarterback room is the guys that he's spending a lot of time with. And I think they want to make sure that they get those questions right as well. So I think that's all part of it here. I don't think that they are eyeing Daniel Jones as some crazy guy that they just, oh my God, we've loved Daniel Jones for so long. Can't believe we got an opportunity to get him. And we've been, sitting there waiting in the wings to get him and get rid of JJ McCarthy. It's not that way. Okay. It is a guy hit the market. That's kind of an interesting idea. He wanted to come to Minnesota, by the way. And I'm guessing because of his contract and the way that things ended in New York, that he probably wasn't going to get a 53-man roster spot anywhere, that he was going to have to be on someone's practice squad, and then he got to pick which practice squad. The money there is probably negligibly different from team to team, so it wasn't about anything but fit. And Daniel Jones loved the fit. He likes the reputation I think the Vikings have, their culture, their facilities, all of that stuff. Genuinely, I think the Vikings are getting a great opportunity for a comp pick because they have a really nice smoothie bar. Like, this is a smoothie bar thing. Like, it's the infamous facilities, the famous TCO performance. Like, Daniel Jones basically just gets to kick his feet up and enjoy a smoothie for half a season and then go make whatever money he makes elsewhere. And the Vikings, for sheltering him in his time of need, get a comp pick. This rules. And by the way, they get to actually decide if they want to be that team. Like, you might as well consider it out earnestly because you get 2 months to work with the guy and you get a pretty good look and see what happens. So all of that is going to be a much more interesting talker in like January and February, like, or whenever the season's over, right? That's going to be a much more interesting talker to see what the Vikings do here. But for now, they've got a game on Sunday. So let's get into the gambling lines on FanDuel and your bold predictions all coming next. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets to anything. If you are trying to get to any of the games in this upcoming homestead, maybe you're trying to get last-minute tickets to this Vikings-Cardinals game, or maybe next week when Kirk Cousins comes to town, or Monday Night Football the week after, any of those, or concerts, comedy, whatever, you can go to Gametime. Their all-in pricing feature is a switch that you can toggle that shows you the upfront price, the price at checkout, I mean, upfront. So no hidden fees, no nothing. It will show you exactly what you are paying right there in the app so you can make an actually informed decision instead of clicking on something and realizing that it's $60 more expensive than you thought because of like processing fees. No, they're going to be honest with you and upfront with you, and they have a lowest price guarantee. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same section and row for less. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, if you're craving Vikings filmed content, I got a couple of videos on Patreon right now that I'm very happy with. I've got a 2-minute breakdown, the 2-minute defense, the meltdowns in Soldier Field. If you want to know what happened there, is it a concern? What's the pattern? I broke down every single play and we talk about it. And just some absolutely like turbo propaganda for Sam Darnold. Let us not forget here in all of this Daniel Jones stuff that Sam Darnold is playing lights out football right now, and I had to go break it down. It's an hour long of just slop it up. Oh, drink it in. Good Sam Darnold play. We absolutely love it. But for now, we have to go over the betting lines on the over-under. All right, so here's the thing. The Vikings-Cardinals lines are not out yet at all, even close, because I'm recording this very early in the week. I'm going out of town to see family for Thanksgiving, so we're going to do what we've done in the past when this has happened, because sometimes FanDuel just doesn't have the lines yet by Thursday. But all of these lines that I will talk about are furnished by FanDuel, and the lines that you can go look at will be at FanDuel later on in the weekend, and you can get them there, but for now, we'll go over some of the basics that are up at FanDuel and then talk a little bit about what kind of lines we maybe can expect. And then you can look for it for yourself. Even if you're in a state that doesn't support sports gambling, you can still look at the odds on the FanDuel website. You can still just go there and look if you're just curious to learn in the way that we've kind of been doing this on the over-under, where we don't necessarily try to predict what bets will cash, but we are just looking at the lines and trying to see what they say about the matchup and like how's the public feeling about this one. So in this case, the public is feeling like the Vikings are going to win. 3.5-point favorites the Vikings are. It's been a very stable line all week long, hasn't moved an inch, very, very even to -108, -112. So that seems to be like where that's going to stay. And the over-under is at 44.5. So that's something like call it like a 24-20 victory. They are anticipating that's a pretty standard fair game, right? That's all pretty medium stuff. It's not particularly high or low scoring is, I guess, what I'm going for. In terms of what else we can find here, the FanDuel always has some game specials. So the game specials have stuff like, will there be a 2-point conversion? Will any quarter end scoreless? That kind of stuff. But I'm actually interested in the sacks. The Arizona Cardinals to record 5 or 6 sacks is on here, and the Minnesota Vikings to record 5 or more sacks on the Cardinals is there. But the Viking sack props are longer odds than the Cardinals. So the Cardinals to get 5 or more sacks is plus 400, 4-1 odds. And the Vikings 5-1 odds. The Vikings to record 5 or more sacks is plus 750. Almost twice as long of odds. And the same thing with 6. Cardinals plus 1,000, Vikings plus 1,800. So interestingly, the market right now thinks that the Vikings are more likely to give up like a sack-tastrophe game than the Cardinals are. But if you listen to yesterday's episode with Alex Clancy, if you were able to get to it, I know it went up on Thanksgiving, but I would love it if you circled back around before the game, because we had a great conversation about the texture of this game. And when I asked Alex what's the main path to the Cardinals losing, he said offensive line performance. So I think that is interesting, but the Cardinals offensive line has also had good games. And that's kind of the thing about the Cardinals. It's really hard to get a handle on them. They've had blowout wins and blowout losses. And so I think there's a consistency thing here. And that's maybe part of why it's going to be hard to kind of get a sense for where this is at. But if you want to look at TD scorer props, just to get the sense for who the most like anticipated superstars of this game are, as we get with every Vikings game, Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson at the top here. Aaron Jones minus 115, Justin Jefferson minus 110. Justin Jefferson hasn't been in the end zone for a while, but he's minus 110 here. Those are the only 2 minus odds guys. And we've seen a bunch of games like this lately where the Vikings have a couple guys that FanDuel expects to get in the end zone, better than 50-50 shot to get in the end zone if it's minus. That's the way to think about that. And the other team has none. But they have 2 main candidates that are close. James Conner plus 110, and I think that's been minus for James Conner a lot this year. I think they're just coming off of kind of a disastrous run game kind of deal. So FanDuel is, I think, a little bit spooked about it. They're a little ginger about it. But you also have Marvin Harrison Jr. at plus 175, and then you get to some of the more higher, longer odds guys. Jordan Addison at plus 185, Trey McBride at plus 210, TJ Hawkinson at plus 230, Cam Akers at plus 330. That's an interesting one. But obviously with the Cam Akers snap counts being fairly consistent, he does get a reasonable chunk here, and he did score at least a passing touchdown right in the Titans game. So he's been in the end zone, and then you get to like Kyler Murray rushing and kind of some of the longer odds ones. There's also funny Minnesota defense to score a touchdown plus 650, more likely than Josh Oliver or Johnny Munt, or exactly as likely as a Josh Oliver and Johnny Munt, also at plus 650. And the Arizona defense to get a touchdown is plus 1,000. Plus 650 feels very short. And so the turnover ideas are very interesting, right? The opportunism, can you punish those? That was a real key of the conversation yesterday. Please go listen to it with Alex Clancy. There are also passing props that are up. We don't have rushing or receiving, but we can speculate a little on those, and we will. But Sam Darnold's passing prop is at 255. That is a very, very high passing line set by FanDuel. Kyler Murray's is at 218. Darnold's has been at like in the 220s for weeks. So I wonder if FanDuel and the sharps that kind of push these lines are starting to catch on to the sort of level of offense that the Vikings are able to generate, especially with healthy Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, with those 3 guys in place. This team can put up 450 yards of offense on a good Chicago defense, and now they're going up to an Arizona defense that has played admirably, but hasn't been, prestige tops in the league like Chicago's defense has been. Of course, the 1.5 touchdown line, it's always 1.5 unless it's something crazy. Minus 135 for Sam Darnold, plus 162 for Kyler Murray. So we're starting to recognize something of a pattern here, even in a limited day on FanDuel where we don't quite have everything out yet, where it seems like FanDuel expects the Vikings to get in the end zone a bunch. Like that, doesn't it? It's like they are, minus odds to throw a couple of passing touchdowns. The running back is minus odds for a touchdown, 24-point line. It feels like they are the expected chalk outcome is that the Vikings score 2 or 3 times in like in the end zone, maybe a couple more field goals, and that they're able to outscore the Cardinals. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting here. However, there is just one point really that I want to make, and it's that Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that I will be very curious to see where their lines end up. The Vikings have given up a lot of wide receiver production. This is very much just a fantasy grambling take. The actual defense itself giving up wide receiver production. A lot of the time, you're not even necessarily mad about it. It's giving up, 6-yard passes and stuff, or garbage time. There's a lot of other, this is not a take. But wide receiver production, wide receivers, put it this way, wide receivers have been hitting their overs a lot. Now, their overs maybe have just been set too low, right? And so they've been really consistently giving up wide receiver overs. So I'm really curious to see what they set up for Marvin Harrison and for Trey McBride, who I think might be the 1A, the second receiving option on the Cardinals. Kyler Murray playing well, and I think he'll be able to get out of the pocket. The Vikings haven't been very consistent about containing. They've been pushing the pocket, but the guys coming off the edge, we saw it with Caleb Williams. They let him out a whole bunch, right? And so I'd be a little worried about the same thing happening with Kyler Murray. And I think the Cardinals will be able to find some of those holes. It's a Brian Flores defense, and hopefully we're just used to it by now, but they will give up explosives sort of by design. It just happens, and it just so happens to be worth it on the whole, because the Vikings, I think, still lead the league in EPA per play defensively. So the whole package works, but part of the cost of that is that sometimes you give up a 25-yard chunk, and those 25-yard chunks might be worth gambling on if you can guess who gets them. So the last thing we do here on the Zover Under is we have to pick the games with the help of my lovely pet rabbits. Zoe is 8-2. ZD is less than that. I think off the bat, I think he's 5-5 right now. I'd have to go back and check because I haven't. I'm just tracking Zoe at this point. She's 8-2. Zostradamus all the way. In this particular case, I set it down right in front of ZD, who was already kind of out and waiting. Put it right in the middle, and he went directly for the Arizona lettuce, kind of standing in the center, and Zoe managed to loop all the way around him to pick the Minnesota Vikings -3.5. So Zostradamus is once again on that Vikings train. The Vikings have been fantastic against the spread this year. They've covered in a lot of them. Zoe's picked in a lot of them. And ZD has sort of suffered for picking the other way, and they all did it again. So we'll see if it turns out the same way or if the streak gets broken. Next up, we're doing your bold predictions. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers at FanDuel can bet $5 on anything that I just mentioned. All of those lines are right there on FanDuel, on the Zover Under, or whatever else you find on there. And you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So you can find some super hyper-conservative alt line, something that's -3,000, some very heavily favored money line. Whatever it is, put $5 on it. You get $150. That's 30-1 in bonus bets, assuming that you still win it. So go do that. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. So if you're sitting there on the couch on, I guess, Black Friday or on NFL Sunday, and you got a hunch on what's going to happen, oh my God, the Vikings are going to blow this lead, you can go place a live bet representing that, a little emotional hedge. I certainly won't judge you. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Once again, that is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Everybody wake up, all right? Get out of your food comas. Get out of your lingering Thanksgiving food comas and wake up, okay? Get rid of that hangover. It's time for your bold predictions. Time to get bold and go to battle. This is the bold prediction segment where we go through the craziest things you guys can conjure and see if you can actually get any right. We've hit one all year. Week one all year. Haven't hit one since. That's the way it should be. All right, you guys have absolutely outdone yourselves again. But let's go back real quick to last week's. Sam said that with Goldilocks and the three Bears, Van Ginkel would get a sack on Williams, force a fumble on one player, and recover a fumble on a different Bears player. I do not believe that the Bears fumbled once in the entire game, so we did not get Goldilocks on the three Bears, but I love how you constructed that. 2014 Weird Twitter Reunion said that the Bear would score under the highest win recorded at Soldier. I put a cap on the wind at like if the wind really gusted. I think I was like this has to be like an under 12 situation. Didn't get there at all. They scored 27, so it was all moot. Ryland Swenson said that to prove the preseason talking heads wrong about wide receiver cores, the Vikings would have 5 players with more receiving yards than the Bears' leading receiver. This didn't happen, right? We did not quite get there. We did have 3 players go over 100 yards, but the Bears also had a 100-yard receiver in DJ Moore, so that did not go down, which is definitely would have rendered a lot of my bold predictions wrong because I probably would have shorted DJ Moore, to be honest. The Magic Skull Bus said that Caleb Williams would start 19 for 19 in his first 19 passing attempts because the Bears were founded in 1919 by George Halas. He said that, it was like so close. There was an incompletion on the 3rd rep. Like, you didn't get close at all. Maybe he was like 17 for 19 or something. Like, he did okay. But yeah, this was not a sweat. Derek McCabe said that Dallas Turner would have 3 unblocked sacks in tribute to Wanham. I do want to mention, I think Dallas Turner, I tweeted that Dallas Turner had like a really bad drive in the game. I take that back entirely. He was actually pretty good on that drive. He backed off into coverage a lot. So I noticed he was playing a whole drive and that he wasn't winning any pass rush reps. Well, that's because he was in hook zones. Kind of hard to win a pass rush rep. And I actually thought he did a pretty good job in coverage. He's growing in that coverage role, which is, he did some at Alabama, but they definitely are trying to emphasize getting him to learn doing that more. And that's taking time. So I think that's part of like the development here. Anyways, Andy G says that the Vikings would tie the single game sack record by a team set by the 1952 Eagles with 14. Did not get there. And I said that this would be the worst yet Caleb Williams game. He would get under a whole bunch of his season lows. We did not get there. Maybe arguably his best game of the year. But let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals 2014 weird Twitter reunion. Has another one for us. He says Kyler is 5'10", 207 pounds. In honor of his stature, the Vikings will put up 5 rushes of 10 or more yards, and Darnold will go over 207 yards. Here's the thing. I like where you're headed here. This is not bold enough. Okay, 5 explosive runs is, it probably would be an over, but it's not a bold over. And 207 yards passing is also that's not even Sam Darnold's actual passing over. So we have to adjust this one a little bit. Instead of Darnold going over 207 yards, let's say a skill player goes over 207 yards from scrimmage. So that's likely Aaron Jones. It could be a 220 Justin Jefferson yard game. Let's do that. And we'll also say, 5'10" is 70 inches. So let's say that in addition to that 207 yard from scrimmage player, a different player has to go for 70 yards receiving. Does that make sense? 70 yards receiving and a 207 from scrimmage player. Papa Bless says, keeping up with the Joneses, the Vikings and Cards are tied for the most Joneses in the NFL. The only players to score a non-passing touchdown will be a Jones. So that is, now that the Vikings have Daniel Jones, who I am very sure won't be active for this game. They also have Jayshon Jones on the practice squad if you're into that. But you're probably talking about Pat Jones and Aaron Jones. And then if we want to talk about the Cardinals, they have Zay Jones, Christian Jones, and Naquan Jones. So, those guys are on IR. So yeah, Naquan Jones is, by the way, a defensive end. So there's a couple of defensive players here, but otherwise it's Aaron Jones, Zay Jones, and Christian Jones. So here's the deal for this. I need there to be at least 2 touchdowns for this to be active. If this is like a grindy, 13, like the 12-7 Jacksonville game, and the 1 touchdown is scored by Aaron Jones, that's not going to cut it for me. I need this to be a game where it was like the game where Jones has scored touchdowns. I need plural touchdowns at least for this to work out. Skull MV says that the last time we played the Cardinals with a QB named Sam was in 2016 with Bradford, and the Vikes won 30-24. The Vikings had 4 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing, 1 kickoff return, and 1 defensive. They also had 1 field goal and 1 blocked extra point. They will do this again exactly. We are doing a couple that kind of spread the wealth. I like it. It's very Thanksgiving, very Thanksgiving-y, very in the spirit of the weekend. So 1 passing, 1 rushing, 1 kickoff return, 1 defensive. What I won't hold you to, if there's like 2 of one of those, if there's more touchdowns than that, I'm not going to null on this. But we need 1, a special teams, a defense, a passing, and a rushing. And kickoff return in particular, if you do say this will happen again exactly, I won't accept like a punt return, right? And the field goal and the blocked XP. But like if they have 3 field goals in addition to that, I'm not going to hold you to that. Cade says that the Cardinals commit the cardinal sin of turning the ball over 4 times, 1 for each cardinal direction. It's interesting that the Cardinals will be the team turning it over 4 times instead of the very turnover-prone Vikings. But I guess that is what makes it bold, and it would be very cool to see the Vikings get back to their turning them over all the time ways. The Vikings have not been as turnover-y lately as they were earlier in the season. I think they've had some opportunities. They just have, like, there's, dropped interception, like they combined them one last time. And it's interesting, a few of these games, or a lot of these bold predictions are essentially ways of saying the Vikings put up video game numbers here, which is not necessarily the easiest thing against this Arizona defense. But the next one is one of the most dastardly ones I've ever gotten. I love this so much, from Purple Drank, who says he found Kyler Murray's Call of Duty Battle Royale stats. This is public information that's like on the Warzone like forum or like on their website or whatever. It's the account he was playing under in 2021. This account hasn't had a game since 2022. So I'm going to guess that there's another account somewhere that we don't know about that he's using that, won't get so much publicity. But on that account, his kill death ratio was 0.67. So his completion percentage will be 67%. His score per minute is 104, which will be the number of passing yards. And his win percentage is 3.4%. So the Cardinals' yards per play will be held to 3.4. This is too exact to be realistic, to be even close to, like, it's too bold, right? To get those exact, and it's like not even in a fun way too bold. So I'll call these all unders, right? If we're under 3.4, I'll give it to you. Under 104 yards, I'll give it to you. And that is a much different way of putting things than all the other bold predictions that are all about the Vikings scoring, big offensive games, hitting all these overs. Let's do some with some unders. I like it. And then the last one. So this comes from Can't Guard Tommy, but I'm not going to take Can't Guard Tommy's bold prediction. I'm instead going to take his idea and make it into my own. So thanks for the idea. I'm stealing it. But Can't Guard Tommy said that there are currently 13 northern cardinal subspecies recognized by the IOC World Bird List. I love you guys. With 14 of them being found south of the United States in Mexico, which means that the score will be 19-14. Now, I don't do score predictions on this. I asked for another way to like incorporate those numbers. He said that by the end of the game, Justin Jefferson would have 1194 yards, which I like the boldness of that, but it's not 19-14. You've rearranged the numbers. I didn't quite vibe with it, but I am putting 1/4 in each of these now to try to get out of the eggs punishment that I've been staring at since week 1. And I will try to take this idea. So if there are only 5 kinds of cardinals that are above the Rio Grande, above the U.S.-Mexico border, that means that, yeah, there's only 5 that we care about, right? So I'm going to say, representing each of those 5 different cardinals will score a touchdown. That is going to be the way. Total defensive meltdown. 5 different Cardinals get in the end zone against the Vikings, and passing touchdowns don't count here, right? This is like touchdown prop odds or prop rules. But Kyler Murray rushing in would count as that. So 5 different Cardinals will score a touchdown. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Everybody be safe all weekend. Have a good time. Hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. And have a great time on Black Friday. I will see you guys all on Monday, recapping everything. We'll also have the postcast on Sunday. I'll be trying to join in from the road, so I'll do my best there. I will see you all for that. And as always, Skull.